So welcome to another episode of Talking Tech. On today's episode, I'm lucky enough to be joined by Mike Spitz, who's Head of AI and Consumer Engineering at PPF. Welcome, Mike. Perhaps you could start with a little introduction to you and kind of your technical journey before we get on to a topic we're going to discuss.
Yes, yeah. So first off, thank you very much for having me. My technical journey, I went and originally did a history and politics degree and graduated after the financial crisis. So that had its own challenges. And then I went back into the computing and when I started off at IBM, so I think big kind of corporate, slow kind of set up, and then moved to lots of different companies, some small, some big, some startups, some seed funded, some again a bit more corporate. And then really have been fortunate enough to find a bit of history just doing stuff for like sports. So for a Premier League, FC Barcelona, built my own fantasy football website as well. And now I've been working at PFF since 2021. When I started off as just a normal software engineer. And now since the last 18 months, been heading up their consumer and AI products. They're a sports data company for American football.
I didn't know. I mean, we could probably talk about it later. I didn't know you'd done a history degree first and then into computer science post-crisis.
Yeah, I'd always been interested in computing, but like my high school counselor told me that I wasn't smart enough to go into that stuff. So I just ended up doing history.
Look, I know it's a topic that we've discussed before, but kind of I know something that you're really interested in around how the fundamentals of engineering are actually changing. Let's kind of start off with what do you see is different at the moment in engineering? What's changing?
Yeah, so I'd say like even in the last 6 months, everything has changed. So last 6 months, you'd be like, oh, like let's build kind of proof of concepts. Let's do something vibe coded. Doesn't matter if you're an engineer. Then it moved more to like an AI assisted engineering where you're asking AI to kind of help you along the path. And now we're moving more to a kind of AI driven engineer where you're more of a passenger and the kind of AI tooling is going and driving a lot of that stuff. So, I mean, even the last 6 months, everything's gone pretty crazy. It's been a lot of stuff to go and catch up on. What I will say is a lot of the processes and systems and environments are built for the old way, where we didn't have to go and we didn't integrate with the different kind of AI toolings. And I think what we've now seen is you've got a few companies who've been able to go and adjust and build things for the agents instead of building things for the engineers. And they're the ones getting all the productivity. They're the ones getting the productivity gains.
Yeah.
And I think the companies that are trying to incorporate AI but still doing things in the old way are the ones which are finding sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
It feels like it helps, but it doesn't.
Yeah. And do you think, like I feel like that when I'm talking to lots of clients, there's those that are fully embraced, fully integrated, use it for faster, quicker, more efficient product release, and there's those that think they should use it because everyone's using it but aren't probably using it properly. Do you think that like still at the heart of that writing good code is still like the core of software engineering, or do you think that's getting driven more towards automated AI as well when it comes to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question because I think at companies when you had really good engineers who did like the most beautiful code ever, if they didn't understand the product or what the consumer was interested in, it didn't really make any difference.
Yeah.
And so like the code cleanliness and the code cleanliness has never really been like, in my mind, from a consumer perspective, the indicator on whether that product is well kind of appreciated. It has an impact on the amount of context an engineer needs in order to understand the code. It has an impact on the maintenance of it.
Yeah.
But from like a business perspective, I'd say it wasn't really ever of interest. And now we're moving to a bit where engineers don't actually need to have the context of the code. So that kind of issue where we need clean code, I actually don't think is as pertinent. However, the different AI tooling has got a lot better. I would say, again, 6 months ago, wasn't doing it very well. It was a bit messy, and you'd be like, I need to do this over again. Whereas now, for the most part, you're like, this is actually pretty good.
Yeah. And do you, actually, that's for me, the bit that's really interesting is like where the technology meets the business and then allows the business to be more productive or efficient. Is do you think technologists are going to become more client-facing, business-facing product people, or do you think the product people are going to become better technologists? And what I mean by that is being better agents of AI and being able to use it.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting, like I think it's an interesting question. I think from a product perspective, they'll be able to do the proof of concepts easier and quicker and to validate their ideas. So they'll be able to do that, and they have a pathway. So things where they're like, oh, I got this idea, but it's going to take me like 5 months to validate it, they can now do it a lot quicker. I do think we hear a lot about the K-shaped economy. I think we are kind of entering like a K-shaped engineering, where you have like the set of engineers who fully understand the system, how everything's built. They're the ones in the company where whenever someone's like stuck or has an issue, they're like, you need to speak to them. They're the ones who are going to know. They are in that bit. They are the ones who can get the best out of AI because they understand all of the potential issues or downfalls that might go and happen. The other group of engineers are the ones who are just doing like normal kind of maintenance, kind of tickets, kind of keep everything on. They're the ones that are going to struggle. The ones that are the kind of the 10x developers, I don't like saying that, but the ones that have like a really good system design understanding are going to be able to outperform a person, because they can build the stuff. They can build the stuff quicker. But in 18 months, 24 months, when might not need as much kind of coaching or kind of like signposting, there is an avenue where like a product person could also build something a bit more fully end-to-end.
Yeah. You've been reading the same self-help books as me, 10x rule and all that. So what I find interesting about that is, so do you think then the kind of evolution of engineering is more towards orchestration of technology rather than like, let's go build it from scratch again?
Yeah, so I definitely think it's going to head more to the orchestration thing. I think but I think there are still those orchestrators in every company. There are still those engineers that don't get to actually code much. They have to orchestrate all the other engineers. They have to go and like do all the system design requirements. They need to spec everything out. They need to work with product, need to work with the design, and they're there to unblock everyone else, right? So like, I think all engineers face this kind of thing in their career when they become senior enough. The amount of coding actually becomes the minority, and a lot of the other stuff is helping and unblocking in a way. They are orchestrating the other engineers to go and kind of do that. It's just we're moving away from helping other people to going and helping agents.
And are you seeing that like taking an impact and effect daily in your technical environment and dev teams?
Yeah, so for us, so like just to kind of set the picture, we've got 30 to 35 engineers spread out from India, Spain, Germany, England, like all of America and Canada. The AI and consumer probably makes around like 20 of those engineers. We have a small tiger team where we're experimenting and we're exploring this stuff. And it's 2.5 engineers. I guess say 2.5 because it involves like basically half of my time, but I don't have that much time. So the old engineering processes, they're staying, like that's still happening to go and see so we can kind of qualify everything.
Yeah.
That a Tiger team is doing everything fully AI. We're building processes for AI. Before we were building processes for people. Engineering was a bottleneck. Engineering was the thing that was slowing down. I think that's why engineering historically have got a lot of really good perks and benefits, because they're the ones that stop a lot of the stuff, and you want to make them be like super happy and make sure everything's easy.
Yeah.
That's no longer the case. And so, yeah, for the last few months, we've been building out processes that aren't really focused around the 2.5 engineers on that target team, but around how we can get the most out of the tooling.
What I find interesting there, so you're basically doing product development in parallel with that to kind of validate it. Is there, so is for the fully AI team, are they still actually putting out production code and implementing it into the, ecosystem that's out
Yes.
to what they are. So, okay.
So for them, we're doing everything kind of production. So I mean, I guess like for a company, we probably face the same thing that a lot of others. We're not able to get as much stuff out. We have the same paralysis across different kind of processes. Some of them are maybe a bit too like strict. And so we have a backlog of stuff that we know we need to build that our consumers have been asking for. So the Tiger team has been just going and grabbing that backlog, and they're basically going into doing it. We deploy almost every day to a production from the Tiger team, and everyone else probably deploys 5 days, every 5 or 6 days. And then the last a couple months, the 2.5 engineers have done 300 PRs. And then the rest of the team is probably around like 40 or 50. So there's a huge
crazy difference.
There's a huge difference. And I know the first thing that kind of people think is like, okay, but like, what about the quality?
Yeah.
What about the bugs? So whenever we do something, we make sure we get feedback from our customers. Because I mean, again, like all the stuff we're doing is for our customers. So literally everything we do from the Tiger team has like surveys, satisfaction scores, and they're all around 4.2 out of 5. So it's like 4.1 or 4.2 out of 5. So that's, from my perspective, that's like a pretty decent score.
Yeah.
We haven't had any outages. We've had a few bugs, but we have bugs pretty much everything else. And I'd actually say the amount of bugs is probably smaller because it's easier to validate stuff. However, this doesn't mean it's easy to kind of pick up and drop everywhere, right? Like there's a lot of stuff that's basically happened in order for us to get here.
So it really interesting what you said, because I think people always ask that question, like, what's the quality of code? How quickly do they get out into production? How many bugs? And I think they forget, like, well, there's bugs in pretty much all code. Like, that's not exchanging here. It's like, but the bit what I find interesting is this. When did this journey start? And like, it sounds like the biggest impact's the last 6 months. And how confident are you in the future that this is the way that software engineering is going? Whether it's, as you said, you can't just drag and drop it into every environment, but at PFF, it's like that's what it's building towards. Like, so 2 parts. When did it start? Like, we're now at this point, and when do you think the future is only Tiger teams of AI agents doing the development?
Yeah. So I mean, I guess I can only speak about my experience. It doesn't mean going to be everyone's, but I'd say it probably started before the advent of LLM. So I started PFF 2020,
yes,
like 5-ish kind of years ago. I was just a software engineer, and then I went up as like a tech lead, and then as like a principal, and then in the role I have, which means I have an understanding of every piece of that development cycle, as someone who's just picking up tickets, to someone who's speccing things out and orchestrating it, to someone who's trying to go and upskill the rest of the team. So I definitely have a privilege on that stuff. From the AI stuff, is pretty much as soon as those LLMs were public and the ChatGPT, we started with creating tests. But if anyone remembers, it was all right, but like the tests it made were a bit kind of silly. It'd be validating things it didn't have to validate, or you'd have to fix it then the next time. And then it got a bit better, and we had automated. We were having the agents do the code reviews. So I think in every engineering department, there's like these kind of super opinionated things that engineers want, like this needs to be built this way, but it doesn't matter. Pragmatically, what I found from like head of engineering was there's a lot of emotion involved in those code reviews, and like having an automated system was amazing because you had the automated system focus on those kind of opinionated basically aspects, and then there's no tension because you just have like a computer saying, oh no, you need to do like I want you to do this instead. And so people are like, all right. So that was probably where it kind of started off. So it's probably since, well, we were 2026, it's probably like 2024, that kind of summer is when we kind of started this. And then summer 2025 is when we started going and exploring, like, how do you get this to a spot where where we're able to go and get this into production. And I mean, anyone who's familiar with it will understand this is pretty much built on top of Claude code, and that's been the thing which has been able to allow us to do all this stuff.
Yeah. And do you think that, I mean, I said, well, one, I think that like the fact that you've been there from like the start of it's like amazing, and also probably gives you a unique insight into how that evolves through a product release and product evolution. At what's the right sort of at what point? Well, when do you think everyone else within the business is going to embrace like, right, every team's a Tiger team? And as you said, I think a lot of people fear like, oh God, what does that mean for my job? I'm a massive believer, and I think you'll produce more products more efficiently to your customers. So actually, you'll still require people. It'll just be how you fit it into your team makeup. Do you think like they'll all have you'll be a team of Tiger teams in the next 6 months, year? How do you think that?
Yeah, so I mean, for us, like I think for us, the strategy is definitely to have multiple Tiger teams. But the process is changing, right? So it's now the ceremonies, sprint planning, sprint refinement, the kind of stand-ups. I don't think that's really there anymore. I think what happens more is you have this hybrid kind of approach of like what the Spotify pods are, where you have these small teams that are tackling a specific thing, and you have a subject matter expert, if that's a product person or someone else, that's fully embedded into that team, because the coding is no longer the bottleneck. So it's now more kind of product and how we want to build it and what the customer is interested in. Now, do I see us needing the same amount? Being truthful, I don't. I just think things are going changing, and I know that I know everyone's a bit concerned about their jobs, and to be honest, I mean, I'm also like, I think when I was speaking about this 6 months ago, when I was building stuff out, I was in the process of hand-holding agents to build the stuff how I wanted to build it. And I knew that like you got millions of developers doing this, and that were training it to basically not need as much handholding. And so now we're in this bit where we are the ones who are orchestrating it. And like even at PFF, we got flows where I go to like I can go to sleep and I get up and there's basically 20 PRs or 30 PRs that are all done to a high quality that I then need to go and sanity check.
Yeah,
that stuff I can also see not needing me anymore in the future either. Like a tooling can do an SEO audit, can do a SWOT analysis, it can have a look at the customer feedback, it can go do all that stuff in theory. However we plummet is the biggest obstacle. But yeah, it definitely is scary from that perspective. But I mean, unfortunately, it's happening. That's just the unfortunate kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, actually, so if we're thinking about that, kind of a good segue into like, if we're talking about the future, like, what do you think will differentiate those like great engineers from average ones? Like, will it be the access to AI tools, how much they use it? What do you think like is going to be the main differentiator for those types of people?
Yes, so I think there's basically two parts. There's one from like an engineering level, and there's one from an engineering and a culture. I think everyone's experienced where there's a really good engineer that goes to a company, the culture doesn't fit or the process doesn't fit, and regardless of them being like an amazing engineer, it just doesn't go and pan out. And then there's like the individual, like their kind of ability. I'd say from an individual, the best way to future-proof, understand AIs, understand how LLMs function, understand what works well, what doesn't, understand that multi-agentic flow, have a better idea on the kind of context sizes, and then just really experiment. I think the only way is to experiment and start small. Like you want to start small, just fix this bug, or go give me an idea about this code base. But it needs to be in a space where the engineer has that familiarity, so they can understand what works well and what goes and doesn't. And then from like the engineer and the company, it really just depends on that kind of the process and culture. I was hearing a talk from a CEO the other day that said they're going to need around the 12 to 18 months to get the change management sorted out, to get the best out of these tools. So we have this kind of classic issue where the companies that are more aggressive or smaller and more flexible are going to get a lot more output over the next 12 to 18 months. than the bigger companies who have a lot of due diligence, have a lot of compliance kind of issues that they need to sort through.
Yeah, and you're spot on with that, especially when you're talking about anyone that's sort of in financial institutions, FSA regulated, whatever, like that's a minefield of what you're allowed to happen there and data. And you kind of answered but my next question with the second part of that of like, I'm always thinking like, what would you, because we get tons of graduates to come to us, like what would you train an engineer like from scratch today if you got them? Like what fundamentals, what principles? I mean, you kind of mentioned just try everything, but is there anything specific you'd pick on that?
Yeah, I think the big one, which is probably system design. So like you need to build a product, but like so going and asking the questions: how many people are going to be on it? What's the concurrency? What are like the non-functional kind of goals kind of the product? Do we want this type of database or that type of like that type of database? Should be microservices architecture, or should be like a monolith?
Yeah,
like all the things that bake into that kind of system design thing, which I think you only really get out of a practice and building as much stuff as possible, is going to be invaluable because the code's the easy bit.
Yeah.
But how we build it is not going to be the thing, which has a bit bigger impact. And so that would probably be the biggest thing.
Okay.
Whereas before it'd be like, hey, you should go learn this front-end language or this back-end language.
Yeah,
that doesn't matter anymore.
No.
I mean, so the 300 PRs, right? They're being done by TypeScript developers who are programming in a language that they don't have any experience in. Again, that sounds crazy, but they don't need to have that understanding anymore. They can still have a look at the code and functionally understand kind of what's happening. But we're now in a bit where someone's skill or knowledge on a specific programming language, in my opinion, is secondary to their ability to understand the full system.
Yeah. And I suppose it's that coupling that with what outcome do my customers want? What should it look like?
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, that's because that's I was about to say. It used to be very easy. Like go and study the solid principles, object-oriented programming. Like as you said, it's irrelevant now. It's kind of
So I mean, like,
well, it's not irrelevant, but
yeah. So I definitely think there are benefits on understanding the clean code and understanding all that stuff.
Yeah.
But we're in a bit where like the access to information is for free. Everything's out there. Someone else has probably done this homework for you and has already gone and told like the agents, these are the things to go and kind of do. But when we go back to the system design front, like those low-level principles, I think, are still going to be helpful. It's more just like, hey, we need you to learn this framework, or we need you to learn like this kind of language, which I think in engineering, I mean, in England from like around kind of COVID, it was very much, hey, we need people who know this framework, or we're doing like a migration from framework A to framework kind of B. Like, I think those types of job requirements are no longer kind of as important.
Yeah. And I think we're seeing a load more requirements around polyglot developers, people that aren't wed to one technology, understand loads of platforms, like they're way more valuable and I think more adaptable for different environments, which clients like at the moment. So I'm conscious I've had you for a little while, Mike, but I'm going to throw a slightly controversial question at you.
Okay.
More just because what I love is your openness about where you started with AI, where it's gone to, and the fact that you're continually doing this with the thought in the back of your mind of like, well, this one day might take my job as well. But like it's interesting to think that. But something that I always think about is, do you think safe's probably a better word than irresponsible, but do you think it's safe to ship AI code without any type of human deep understanding of like what it is, what's going out, what are the impacts? Like, yeah,
there is a very big caveat. So like whenever we do this, we need a validation process.
Yep.
So when we're building code and AI is helping us, or AI is going and doing it kind of autonomously, it needs a validation. So that can be like the formatting, just to make sure everything's done in the right format and style, and those kind of opinionated things that we spoke about is automatically handled. It needs to have a test to make sure that the code is accurate. It needs to have the end-to-end test or the integration test. Like all that stuff needs to be there. And what's also most important is the starting off spec, or the starting off a ticket has to have the acceptance criteria. It
Yeah.
needs to have those. It needs to have those different kind of edge cases, like explicitly mentioned and basically handled. But if everything's there, like the AI is in a good enough spot where it's doing a code to the same level as like a normal engineer is, and so the same way that a normal engineer would be building this, like I wouldn't go see it as like it's dangerous because it's done by like the kind of AI.
Yeah.
It's only dangerous if those validation and verification steps aren't there, which I think still holds true in a traditional engineering org. There might be an engineer who hasn't done the test or who hasn't validated things but goes and pushes it out. So I definitely think it is safe, but you need to have the validation steps in there.
Which, as you said, is you can have an organization of unbelievable engineers, but you have one that doesn't quite understand that and pushes out some code that can create issues anyway. So there's no real change there. Well, Mike, I really appreciate you joining us on Talking Tech, and I'm really excited to see like kind of what the next 6 months looks like, because it feels like it's accelerating quickly compared to what it was 18 months ago.
It's definitely going a little like a hockey stick. I definitely feel like I'm not able to have a break or go and like have a pause. I find pretty much every other day something very big happens, and it's
well, yeah, exciting concerning when you said that you can get an AI agent to do something while you're sleeping, wake up and it's all done. Like that's I mean that's like the ultimate efficiency of getting as much out of engineers as you can.
Yeah, so that's the step that we're at the moment. Then the next step on is the thing I'm speaking about, to go find the kind of SEO issues, find those accessibility issues, get the feedback. And even if it's just like, hey, here's some ideas, we've already done all the specs and all the engineering docs, just let me know which ones you will want to pick up. And so like, that's probably where we're heading the next kind of few months. And that's why I'm probably a bit more concerned about my job for the next few months after that. But yeah,
well,
that's where we are.
It's fascinating to talk to you about it, and I'm sure we can carry on for ages, but thank you very much for joining us on Talking Tech. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Not at all, and hopefully everyone else can join us on the next episode of Talking Tech. Thanks, Mike. Cheers.
Thanks.